Hello, this is Chris and Rick Talk Guitars.
And today we're going to talk about the Musicmaster Bass Amp.
Cool.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
It's a sleeper amp.
Oh, a sleeper,
is what they say.
Okay.
The Musicmaster Bass Amp came out in 1970, and it was supposed to be a practice amp for bass players. And it's a really lousy bass amp, stock especially, but it turns out it's a pretty good guitar amp, and it used to be pretty cheap. Just checking eBay, it's still pretty cheap. I mean, it starts in the neighborhood of $300, and for a vintage hand-wired tube amp, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. And even at $300 or $400 to me, to get a 112 combo like that from the 70s is, I think it's totally fair. Well, it's a great little amp.
To put it in perspective, I think a used Blues Junior is kind of in that same range, starting around 3 or so, and going up even more. I think the Blues Junior new is like in the neighborhood of 5. So yeah, it's a no-brainer for me. I mean, You get this hand-wired vintage amp for that price. I have one. You have two, right?
I've got two. My bass player that I played with for years stumbled upon this video on YouTube, and he sent it to me, and it's this dude in his bedroom cranking a guitar through...
Oh, that dude.
Yeah, that dude. The bedroom dude. Cranking this amp, this little Fender amp. It sounded awesome. He had it dimed, and when you dime these things, they get a really great, creamy overdrive that sounds awesome. But if you swap out the speaker with I use a ceramic Jensen, which I like. We can talk about that in a little bit. But I use it as a gigging amp, and it takes pedals well, and I just dial in the headroom I need and then apply pedals to it, and it's freaking cool.
It's great. I love it. I have a 64 Princeton, which has the same power tube, 6V6s, and I find myself, especially for live, if I'm playing with a drummer, I'll use the Musicmaster bass. Part of it is I don't care about it so much, but the other part of it is it hangs really well with a drummer for reasonable rock stuff. For any kind of rootsy stuff or reasonable rock stuff, it's great. I have the same speaker in it. It's one of those reissue Jensen ceramics that a lot of people don't like, but it sounds fine. It sounds great. The Musicmaster Bass Amp is super simple. There's a volume and a tone control, and that's all I need. I mean, it's...
Yeah, I like the simplicity of that too. 2 knobs, no weighting. And again, I like the ceramic speakers too. You and I have talked about this before too. The Alnico versus ceramic. You know, obviously there's a whole contingent out there that swear by the Alnico, and that's fine. For me, the low end is too flubby. The ceramic speaker tightens up that low end for me that I like a lot. And it's just a great speaker. It gets a really good mid-rangey rock sound, especially through this little Musicmaster Bass Amp.
If you score one of these amps, it needs a speaker. The speaker that's in there is shit. It's really, I mean, even for like cheap Fender stuff of the era, it's dog shit.
It is.
Just before you swap that speaker out, you should plug a bass into that though and put it on about 5, so you can see how many kids were probably really bummed out.
How disappointed would you be
when they got one of those for Christmas
morning? Oh, great! I got a bass amp. Plug it in, Timmy.
A fart city. Swap the speaker out. I use it with Fenders and Gibsons. It sounds great. I mean, right around 4, it starts to get kind of nasty, and from there on up, it doesn't get a whole lot louder, but it just gets raunchier.
And it's a cool raunch. If you were just playing straight up rock with gain, you could dime that thing, and it sounds awesome. And like you're saying before, like the way you play, you could either lean into it and, get the full grind, or maybe not dimed, but if you cranked it where you were getting more gain, you could finesse it to, get a little cleaner sound, and then boom, lean into it and get... It's just a really cool little amp, I think. I dig it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I did to mine when I got it.
Did you do the Klein mod to it?
I did the Klein clone. No, all I did was, it doesn't have a fuse in it, so you're going to want to put a fuse in there so you don't die. And the caps, if you get an old one, the caps are probably gone. They use really cheap filter caps. I had to replace those, and I think a couple other electrolytics, but it's up and running. Other than that, it's completely stock.
What are the specs on this damn thing?
It's 12 watts. They had 2 different tube configurations. There was a 6V6 and there was a 6... What is that number? I can never remember.
6AQ5.
6AQ5 tube, which is electronically the same as a 6V6, but it's a different... I think it's like a 7-pin or a 9-pin.
Do you think there's a discernible sound difference or tone difference?
There is
or?
probably some, but I think that tube that I can't say
6A-Q5.
it's supposed to be the same kind of electronically as a 6v6, so they'll be close. I've heard people say they're different. I haven't heard that one. I've only heard the 6v6
I'm not even sure what mine
ones.
are, to be honest.
Yours are 6v6s, Rick. I can't believe
thanks.
you don't know that.
Well, you're my tech guy, so you would know. You're like
So
my
what were you
hairdresser.
asked me a question and now I forgot what it was because I was rambling.
Oh, I was just asking you about the specs on this damn thing.
Okay,
because-
it's 12 watts,
Yeah.
two 6v6s. It's got I think one. Let me look.
Yeah.
It might only be one preamp.
Check it out.
I've got one right here.
Okay.
Leaning it back.
What do you got?
Yep, just one 12AX7.
That's all you need, man.
That's all you need. One of the cool things about this is this shows you how when Fender went cheap in the 70s, the chassis is a Champ chassis. So I could take this chassis out of this amp and plug it into a Champ cabinet or vice versa. Sonically, it's really weird, and that's what I like about it. It's not scooped sounding like, even a Champ, or it's got more mid-bark to it, so It's great. And I'm going to probably be killed for saying this, but I actually like it better than the Silverface Deluxe reverb. I know, that's like one of those amps that everybody cares
We're going to get a lot of mail about that.
a lot,
Chris.
I know. Well, the reason being is, like I mentioned, it's not that smiley face curve. It's...
Yeah, like mid-range to me is, and again, within the spectrum of treble and bass, but mid-range to me is the quintessential guitar sound, and this amp gets that for me. Like, I love it. I love the fact that it's mid-rangey and a little barky. But as I said before, man, it's one of the most versatile amps I've ever played. It takes pedals really well. It's got, like Chris said, I mean, you couldn't, larger venues, you probably want to use a higher wattage amp and stuff like that. But for a lot of the gigs that he and I have done in clubs with a full band, it's more than enough to play in that situation. And every time we played with these amps, guitar players in the audience come up to us and say, hey, what is that? What are you playing through? Because it sounds so cool.
Right.
And we don't tell them because we don't want them to buy one and
I just like it because
reduce the
I'm
market.
really lazy and having a volume you can't get in trouble. Give me a bunch of knobs on amp and I'm going to get in fucking trouble. I'm going to be up there twiddling knobs instead of
yeah, it's like having a Mesa Boogie Mark IV, or it's got the knobs, it's got the EQ, it's got the...
Right.
This has two knobs.
Coffee maker.
A volume and a tone. That's all you need, man.
Right, man, because all you need is volume and you need some tone.
Hello.
Right?
Come on. Yeah.
So it's all there for you. It's plug and play. And I like that. One thing I do not like about this amp, which is a pretty small thing, is you got to be careful when you're hauling it because there's nothing, the tubes are just kind of hanging out the back. It's a big open back. So, if your drummer throws his snare drum in the back and smashes your tube, that could be a problem. I'd like to have a little case for mine. That would be cool.
Yeah.
I
hear you.
Like a hard
It's
shell. But
vulnerable.
that's about the only thing I can think of that's bad about it. A lot of people mod these. I was online looking at mods, and it's crazy. I mean, do what you want to your amp, but I don't see... There was one person in particular that I found amusing because he claims that he loves these amps. So what he does is he gets these and he guts them and builds something in there. And if you love this amp...
He loves the particle board.
I guess he loves the particle board case... And that's his other thing. He's talking about how cheap they are. Yes, they're cheap. They're cheap like a Champ. A Champ is not shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is basically a Champ with some extra bits in there. So, it was them being cheap in a hand-wired amplifier. So everything in there is hand-wired. It's great. So
yeah, and to your point, Jim, my friend, the bass player that turned me on to these things, he's done a mod or two to his. And
damn you, Jim.
I know. I curse him. And I'm like, why? Why? The amp doesn't need any modification. Swap out the speaker. That's the only mod you need to do. And maybe, like Chris says, put in a fuse, and you've got a great amp that, you can use it in your bedroom at low volumes. You can use it in most club situations with a full band, and you've got plenty of headroom. It's just a cool little amp. And I'm just fascinated by the fact that it started out as this cheap bass amp, and then bass players plugged it in and immediately threw up, and rightfully so, because the speakers in those things. And again, I don't know what they were thinking. Like, yeah, this is a bass amp. It must not, again, it's when CBS bought the company, and who knows who was making decisions, but it's not a bass amp. It's just silly.
No, you just look at the transformers and you're not going to get a very good... But I will say this, with the speaker swap, I've used it as a bass amp for small combos. You just can't push it with a louder drummer. I mean, I've run into headroom problems with it when I was playing rock. It sounds really good, but not having that extra headroom, it's a little too squishy. I mean, and I've heard people say, "Oh, it sounds great out front," but I was uncomfortable with the amount of headroom I had, so I stopped using it for the louder rock stuff. But I grab that anytime I'm doing like a rootsy rock thing, kind of country tinge thing, or just dicking around. That and my Princeton are the amps for that. But as I say, I prefer this over the Princeton for a lot of stuff. It's got a solid state rectifier. That's another thing about it. That does give it a little bit more clean headroom over a Princeton. So I think that's what helps get that up there to hang with a drummer better.
That's kind of a cool testament, though, that you like that more than your Princeton, because that Princeton's a cool amp.
Well, I love my Princeton, but part of the reason is the Princeton's staying home now. I'm not taking it out anymore. It's like got collectible and valuable. So I have taken it out a few times for the John Prine tribute band that I'm in.
Do you know any prominent players who play these amps where it's kind of filtered into like
Stinky Peterson?
Stinky Peterson.
Yeah. From the Stink Tones.
Got it.
I think the Black Keys.
Oh, okay.
Were. And I have a friend who is owned Ghetto Records in Detroit, who records a bunch of really cool garage bands, and he's a fan of these amps. Oh, cool. And he claims he likes the ones with the tube. I can't remember.
QA5, whatever it is.
Yeah, he likes those better. Really? So I would like to hear one.
Yeah,
because he gets great. His stuff. His name is Jim Diamond, and he does Ghetto Records stuff. Cool. And he gets really cool guitar tones. So him liking that is a testament to the coolness factor. And like I said, I just looked on eBay yesterday, and there were some going for about $300, and that's like a
great price.
That's like a no-brainer.
Again, exactly. I mean, you can't touch like even a black or silver face Fender that is the models that are known, right? Like you're saying, Deluxe or Pro,
even a Champ. You
can't
even get a Champ
exactly.
for that.
And so if you want a vintage Fender amp, granted, yes, it started out as this weird bass amp, but if you want a vintage Fender amp, swap out the speaker, you've got a great guitar amp that really is vintage. And it, like Chris says, it's hand wired, and it can just be one of the amps in your arsenal that you use depending on the context, and it's a great amp. And again, I was reading online too, some people were like bagging on it for not being reliable, or I wouldn't, $300 is way too much for that amp. Yeah, and I'm like, I just thought that's ridiculous, man. I have two of them. I've used them now for probably 5-6 years, clubbing, all kinds of stuff. Never had one breakdown, never had a problem with one ever. I'd gladly pay up to $500 for one if it was clean. It was super clean. Yours is really clean.
Thanks.
Yeah. How about you? I mean, I think they're worth every penny.
Oh, I do. I got mine. I did some work for somebody. He had 3 small vintage amps, and I did like recaps and put 3-prong chords on them. Did some service restoration to them, and he gave me that in trade.
Lucky bastard.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, to add to what he's saying as far as like its value, it's a great utility amp because, like I say, once you replace that speaker, you can use it for bass, for rehearsing bass, recording bass, or small little gigs. So it's great. Exactly.
I don't think it'll ever be held in the same esteem as those other models, but I have noticed in the last several years that more people have become aware of them, and more people are appreciating what they are. And like I said, I've seen the kind of prices go up accordingly. Maybe they kind of fluctuate, but I do know that when I was first looking at these, they were really cheap. I mean, really cheap. And
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, any guitar player who has heard one and checks them out really digs them. And so...
Yeah, the getting popular and becoming desirable has also caused backlash. You'll get that with anything. So now you'll see people like, oh, it's a piece of shit.
Well, of course.
Blah, blah, it's cheap, blah, blah. I kind of don't know. I'm looking at that, and I'm trying to figure out what reliability issues... It's like any old Fender. It's like, if you played it hard... and you play bass out something, something mechanical might break or something.
Or you might blow a speaker.
But the thing of it is, there's nothing in there that you can't replace.
No,
I mean, it's not like, you know, a circuit board where it's like, well, this went out, so we're going to throw half the amp away, or, you know, just throw it in the garbage. A Fender amp or any amp from that era it's a lifetime thing. You can hang on to it, you can take care of it, you can find shit for it.
And it's such a simple amp, like you said. There's not much to the amp to go wrong. So I mean, like you said, if something does go wrong, it's pretty easy to diagnose and fix.
Exactly.
And most likely it's probably a speaker. And the stock speaker you want to get rid of anyway because it's a piece of shit.
Right. And you want to clean them?
Yeah.
No, you don't have to convince me.
Okay.
It's an amp that I like and I use often. It's all my amps, and I have a few. They get used, and this one doesn't get used any less than any of my quote cooler amps.
We're big fans, and I love. There's nothing more fun for me to play a gig with this amp and then have some guitar player come up and go, "What are you playing through?" Because I remember like that.
You tell him it's modded. It's a music that's
It's got the
heavily modded. It's got.
Remember Tim DiGiulio? I think he's in. These other bands. We played the Daryl's Tavern, and he came up to me and asked me what he looked at. He was in awe of that amp, and I told him and gave him the whole scoop, and it was cool because he's a great guitar player and he plays through a great rig. He's probably got 5 of them now. He's got his arsenal of Musicmaster Bass Amps. But seriously, I mean, and my nephew, he was in a band, and the guitar player wanted to know what I played, and he bought one. He went out and bought one because he liked it so much, and so. That's the cool thing I find about these amps is they're so weird and so still really relatively unknown. So if you go play a gig, somebody's going to come up to you and go, "What the hell are you playing through?" Because you get a great guitar sound. And it's fun to tell them, "Well, it's this crazy little Musicmaster Bass Amp and blah, blah, blah," and whatever. But it's fun. It's fun. And
then they're going to steal your shit, man.
And then they steal it.
And they're not going to get any royalties.
No. So that's the Musicmaster Bass Amp.
Yeah, a good amp. We love it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Go out and get one, for God's sake.
Get one today.
Even if it's $500, buy one. Jesus, you'll thank us. Maybe.
Hate mail.
All right. Well, that's another great episode of Chris and Rick Talk Guitars.
Yeah.
Join us next time.
It's early. I think we're coming into it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.